Today we're going to be talking about indie fashion in relation to indie music culture. Actually, psych, we're not going to be doing that. We are going to be talking about how indie is dead. Indie is a shell of what it once was. Indie is a total grift. It's been totally taken over by corporations, and it's a total illusion. It's just an aesthetic. It has no morals to stand on anymore. It has no backbone. Neopunk, what do you mean? I love indie music. I support indie artists. I see indie music on my Spotify all the time. I go to indie shows. I'm an indie guy. I'm an indie head. If you were to say that to me, quite honestly, I'd probably be overwhelmed by the amount of questions you were asking me, and I'd go like nonverbal for like a few seconds. But after that, I'd slap you silly and I'd roll you over like the blueberry girl from Willy Wonka. Let me further explain though. I put in the bare minimum effort required for any kind of music YouTube video or any music YouTuber for that matter, and I actually Googled some of the music I'm talking about. Tame Impala, nobody's expected them at this size to be a real grassroots indie artist, you know? He puts on the style of kind of this hippie guy on stage. He's collabed with Travis Scott. He's done stuff on Astroworld. He's worked with everybody. He's a big industry player. Boy Genius kind of teeters on being, I'm kind of surprised that this isn't indie. I'm not so surprised considering their size nowadays. The Strokes, everybody knows Julian Casablancas is a daddy's boy. But some things that really did strike me were, for example, Caffeine with Tech It. You know, they had that one song that blew up on TikTok. But what's incredible to me is that just out of one song, and I guess enough traction from that, they signed themselves to Elektra Records. Another one that surprised me was Girl in Red.
Well, personally, for me, it wasn't too surprising because it's really the closest thing that we have to film music in the mainstream.
And so what do these big ugly people and big ugly corporations create? You know, what is the end result? What does this mean for the indie artists? And especially, what does this mean for indie fashion? It means Turnstile wearing an outfit that looks like your Explore page's worst nightmare. It means Julian Casablancas doing his best impression or cosplay of Top Gun. It means thousands and thousands of indie boys all across the US running to Reverb.com or their local guitar shop and trying to find a Stratocaster, when they'd be better off doing something beneficial for their future, like studying for the AP classes tomorrow.
Now, I just want to say as a disclaimer, I understand that we're at this weird place with fashion, and everything is so niche, but at the same time, people gravitate towards what's comfy and what's easy. And right now, all of those things are pretty much this. They just look like this. And you can go to any show, and not just indie, and end up seeing a fit that looks just like this. Light up that ciggy and hop in your time machine, because we're going to be hopping all the way back to 2008 at the beginning of Indie Sleaze.
Yeah, Indie Sleaze, for those who are uninitiated, Indie Sleaze was this 80s-inspired faux chic look. It was bohemian, it was very trashy, and of course, obviously very sleazy. If you've ever seen an American Apparel ad or watched Skins, you can get a good sense for the style. And the funny thing is, it's having a revival with kids nowadays because of the Y2K sweep that's been occurring for a while. And, you know, to me, that makes sense. We're back in the swing of things where we're like so far into post irony now. And Indie Sleaze has a fat stench of that. So I could see why we vibe with it nowadays. I'm assuming that for anybody back in the day who actually lived through the true Indie Sleaze era, you'd be living in New York. You'd be getting off of your creative director job at 5 o'clock, maybe earlier, depending on what day it is. You'd go and bar hop for a little bit after taking the train, chill a little bit with your buddies. You'd talk about what music and films you've seen. Because you got to remember, this was like also kind of mixed in with the whole hipster thing. After that, you'd probably just cop an 8-ball and go to whatever party is happening, and you'd listen to like the newest A-Track remix that the DJ's playing. And you know, I really got to commend the new people in the indie sleaze scene, because to commit to the bit like that, through the anorexia, through the cocaine use, through the sexual allegations, I mean, it's got to be one hell of a career you're going to have in 2023. So best of luck to you. But, you know, with any cultures like this where it's very hedonism-centric, you know, that's also going to be their downfall pretty much. And in the case of indie sleaze, that's exactly what it was. And with the arrival of like new social media and things like that, things are starting to change pretty quick. That and the idea of what a hipster was and hipster style and the broad trend of hipster just kind of taking a bigger place in the culture. You know, but with every generational upswing, there's going to have to be a more bland and boring kind of suburban downswing. And in this case, with the oncoming presence of more social media, that ended up looking like this. Just letting you know right now, if you're a Zoomer out there who gets really annoyed by girls who like Grimes, you could definitely blame the generation before you guys, because this is pretty much where it all started. The love for Lana, the love for Grimes, the love for Crystal Castles. It really started right here.
Yeah, so this era was pretty iconic. Art Ho came into the public vernacular. I was probably about about 13 years old, and I had a crush on the first ever art hoe that existed in the state of Georgia. She was in my art class because, like what other environment would facilitate this kind of fixation? And I remember going on her Tumblr one night, and she would always repost GIFs of Skins, the show Skins. I vividly remember this. I went on piratebay.com, and I pirated the entirety of Skins so I could watch it, to kind of relate to her. And I couldn't make it past 30 seconds into the first episode. So I changed my game plan, and I just started to lie to her.
So back when I was in high school, I was with a really bad friend group, and this friend group loved doing drugs, and they were very alternative. They loved going on Tumblr. They were really into online culture. They were really into underwater basket weaving forums, and they were really into music, most importantly. Specifically, the girl named she was really quirky. She was definitely like if you had to like picture an art hoe in your head, like that's who she was. She was the art hoe. She would get dunked on a lot from all the people in the friend group because everybody in that friend group, they were all real assholes. They were all real bullies to each other, and they just used each other for drugs and to shit on each other. And it was super toxic. Point being, she had a little vial that she would carry around with her in school. She would always carry little Xanax with her because it was cool and edgy. And one of the other kids in the friend group, he was the art bro. He was the opposite. I mean, he was the perfect match for her, like the perfect art hoe couple. And because people hated her so much, one of the specific kids in the group, his name was he was especially vicious. He was the one to perpetuate the idea that the art hoe would eat the art bro's ass whenever they hooked up. And, that was just simply hilarious. They never stopped memeing about that. It went so far as that one day, he has this famous story. One day, he went over to house to drop off some drugs. He claims that he vividly saw the silhouette on the wall of her eating his ass, and that's how he knows for a fact that she was an ass eater. So yeah, basically that and Arctic monkeys is what I remember. And now as we even look back at this era today, if you look on TikTok, it's 2014 Tumblr girl. So that makes you bring into question, well, what were the guys doing, right? For the fellas, there were a lot less crazy options. Every dude managed to look the same through this era, and the Midwest emo scene is kind of a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it was pretty much the standard uniform at this point in time, and really, it hasn't really changed that much, to be honest. Pants, shirt is tucked into pants. There's usually a black belt involved that holds the pants up and keeps the shirt tucked in. You're going to have some sort of descendants shirt. You're going to look in the mirror and realize that you're like this lanky, skinny little dweeb, and that you can't really run away from that fact. So instead, what you do is you lean into it as a bit and make it part of your character as a bit.
If he wears keys like this in front, boy's a dog.
But overall, these fits are really basic. It's going to be a lot of band tees, and a lot of times not even band tees, just children's graphic tees as well. And at this point in time, Mac DeMarco really started to plague indie boys with the whole I don't care how I look thing. I'll wear a graphic tee of like an anime or like some other form of children's media.
And similar to the darker period indie girls were having back in 2014 with Tumblr, guys have kind of caught up to that in a more unique and updated way. And I think that's best represented with the male manipulator archetype. It's a little bit tough with the male manipulator archetype because halfway into the world of indie, halfway into the world of just trying to get women. And that's going to radiate through their music taste. It's going to radiate through their fashion, their film choice, their choice to play guitar. You'll see it in their baggy pants. You'll see it in their Vivienne Westwood pearl necklace. And you'll also hear it in their condescending tone when they're trying to explain to you why they deserve to be in an open relationship.
Now, if you're a long-standing fan of Neopunk FM, you know that we've already covered this archetype ad nauseum, and you've probably heard us make the same 2 or 3 jokes over and over again, but it continues to get us views and continues to make us more money, so we will continue to make the same 2 or 3 jokes ad nauseum for the foreseeable future.
Now, for a lot of us, when we were young, there weren't really any options for getting alternative clothing very easily. Maybe you didn't have a real bank account set up yet, and your money was low. And maybe your money is still low. Or maybe you went to the mall and your mom or your dad bought you your clothes, and maybe they still do that. So then the most accessible options for us really were going between Zoomies, Hot Topic, Spencer's, etc. I mean, it's so easy to just go into Hot Topic when you're a kid, pick out a Nirvana shirt, pick out a Pearl Jam shirt. That's enough credit for you. You're in high school, everybody will know you're indie. Done deal. And right after that, the convenience of having the shoe store just right across the lane is incredible. You could just go into the Van store, get yourself some blue low tops, and you'd be set for the school year. Or maybe if you were like a cringy skater, you could have gone into Zoomies, you would have bought yourself a Rip and Dip shirt. Check it out. Alien flipping you off. Check it out. Cat flipping you off. It's 2014, 2015. You think this shit is awesome.
Or maybe you would hang out at Spencer's with your friends and try to shoot spitballs through the big gauges on the ears of the people that worked there.
But if you're an indie adult, I mean, like, what reason do you have to be spending your money here? What, you're going to support these like big mall chains? Like, what's the point of that? Number one, it's not indie. Number two, you only have a limited selection of fashion anyways. Just go online. You got to get to the point where you can admit to yourself that if you're an adult going into Hot Topic or one of these stores to hit on the alt girls, you need a life. You need to go online. You need to use one of the dating services, go to a bar, go do something that adults do. Like, don't go to the mall.
Or maybe you turned 19 years old and you realize that malls just weren't for you anymore.
Workwear isn't the worst thing you could rep as an indie person, but it's a really painfully boring option. I mean, people will hyperfixate on it as a staple. You've probably seen everybody you know wear a piece of Carhartt or a Dickies shirt or some Dickies pants, especially if you're in the music scene. To me, wearing workwear really screams, I'm in the know for what's cool, but I either don't have enough money and I just don't care enough, or I have lots of money and I care a lot about fashion. Or you have a lot of money and you're trying to make a statement. I'll give them credit, guys, think in a pretty utilitarian way. So having something that lasts you forever and never seems to go out of style, it's a good mature choice. It's definitely better than the malls, but it's up there with mallcore for being an entry-level style.
The important thing to remember here is that the more pieces of workwear you have directly correlates to how wealthy your parents are.
And of course, you can't forget thrifting. It's truly the sweet champion, the hometown hero, the king when it comes to the indie style. I'm sure lots of us all have memories of going into Goodwill or Salvation Army with our friends, just with like a few bucks to our name. And you look for shirts that said silly stuff like, I'm a man, I'm 40, or, you know, whatever the local soccer team is. And it kind of looks hard because it looks like something you would have seen on Instagram at the time. But we've lived long enough to see the obvious downsides to this. Resellers have totally absorbed the space of vintage. We've all looked for our prized vintage band tee only for it to be on eBay for like hundreds of dollars. Or if you want to find it in a boutique, you'll probably have to buy it from a guy that looks like this. What can you really say? Can't live with thrifting, can't live without thrifting. It's a staple. It's here to stay. There's always going to be thrifting. It's a classic. And of course, at the intersection of high fashion and the indie world, we pretty much have all the brands I plan on copying when I start flexing and changing up on everyone. This fashion, it's at the level of not even being sure if what they're wearing goes hard all the time, but wearing it will make you feel like you're an inspired and important artist.
Now, at this level, it gets tricky because at this upper echelon of alternative fashion, people are behind at least 7 to 9 levels of post irony. And they themselves are confused if they even like the outfits that they're wearing. But it's important anyway that you commit to the bit and dive headfirst into that look. Otherwise, the underground artist community of 1 to 200 people in your medium-sized city won't think that you're cool anymore, and they won't invite you to the cool basement parties where they all do ketamine in the dark together.
A few funny things I want to point out here. Okay, you have brands like Online Ceramics and Brain Dead. They've worked with hip, cool indie people. Some of these pieces, obviously, they look like indie pieces, but they have high prices. One of the real interesting things here is the Heaven Marc Jacobs and Deftones collab. Obviously, they knew this was going to sell. Everybody loves Deftones right now. Super hot. And, there was controversy when it came out. Some people liked it. Some people hated it. Whatever. What's really funny to me, for each collection they'll do physical items. And for the Deftones collection, they specifically did around the fur, the CD. The easiest bag they've ever made in their lives. Just get the CDs, resell them, boom, you're done. They didn't have to make anything new, they just resold it. And what's crazy, Heaven by Marc Jacobs, usually they'll do like a different or cool version of like if they're selling a product. In this case, they didn't. They're just selling you the CD. They're slapping it in your face. You like Deftones, you love Deftones, buy the CD. It's from us, it's Heaven by Marc Jacobs, it's cool. You could have gone to your local record shop and bought this. You would have done more good by doing that. And that's all I have to say about that. But, it's time for us to slow down and really think, what about the indie old heads? The people that were there before we were. The people that really built this shit for us. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now without them. Iggy Pop here is just one example of indie twink death. I mean, he looks like Frank Gallagher from Shameless. He looks like a grandpa who just woke up from a drunken stupor at 3 a.m. looking for his denture cream. He looks like if you get too close to him, he might rattle you with his cane.
His skin looks Italian without him being Italian.
But not all indie twink deaths look the same. The journey is not the same for everybody. I had to think about, okay, what's the best way I could show this? So to make it easier to understand, I put it into a chart since that's what we do here at Neopunk FM. And I think this is a pretty good representation of the different paths that indie guys take when they enter twink death. No further comment.